Welcome everyone to the next in our technical topics for the Building Smart USA webinar series. We're here today with Connor Christian, who is the leader of the Solutions Provider Group. Connor, if you want to move to the next slide. So today we're going to talk about that Solution Provider Group and what we plan on doing. I'm going to let Connor take it from here and chime in anytime we need to. If there's any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat as Connor presents. Like I said, all of you are muted, but please feel free to ask any questions in the chat and we'll try to address them at the end of Connor's presentation. I think Connor feels like we'll have a good amount of time to be able to address any of those questions. And it is being, as I said before, it is being recorded. And so the recording will be accessed through the Building Smart USA website very shortly after. So with that, Connor, take it away.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Just the quick agenda. We're going to do an introduction to Building Smart USA and the Solution Provider Group. We're going to talk about some goals and activities of the SPG. Talk about a call to action, and then go into questions and answers. So the introduction to Building Smart USA and the Solution Provider Group. First, I'm going to go over a little bit about Building Smart USA for those of you who may have missed it in previous webinars. The Building Smart USA is the USA chapter of Building Smart International. It is a 501c6 nonprofit incorporated in 2021. It's an industry peer-led organization, and that's exactly what the SPG is about. It's about getting together a group of industry peers, and we're here to develop and promote the open industry standards. This is the general setup of how Building Smart USA is functioning. There's an executive committee. Underneath that, there are some industry committees, specialty committees, and services. Under the industry committees, you have your typical kind of matches with the rooms in Building Smart International, roads, bridges, and tunnels, buildings, airports, some others to be determined. And in the specialty, you have education, professional certification, as well as technical. And it's in that technical area that underneath that we have the Solution Provider Group, as well as the US Data Dictionary Working Group. Outside of that, there's also a services group that does marketing and bookkeeping and admin. So looking at that executive committee, we have Calvin Kam, who's the bS-USA chair. Ian Howell, he's the interim executive director. Will Sharp from HDR is the chair of the roads and bridges industry. He's the interim chair. Cindy Baldwin is the airports industry chair. Tony Ranella is the education and PCERT director. And Jeff, who's on the line here, is the technical committee chair. So thinking about, what place everyone is taking in the industry and how it relates. When you look at this, you have your software vendors, you have the industry, and then you have BSI. And there's a relationship between them where, the industry is looking for what they need. BSI is looking for how to support it, and the software vendors are looking for what to provide. And the SPG working group is all about those software vendors and making sure that they are providing what is needed for the industry using the open standards provided by Building Smart.
And hardware vendors too.
And hardware vendors too, thank you. So the role of Building Smart USA is that it's US focused, but it is still an international partner to BSI. But we're here to support what's going on in the US and be a gathering point for any of the US software vendors and hardware vendors so that they're able to participate. It's actually not just them, but also all of the industry members as well in the US. So there's a place to touch base, come up with common interests for the US and communicate those out to the international community. Now, the solution provider group's mission is to connect software and hardware vendors to open standards and projects for the mutual benefit of both. And while that's pretty straightforward, I think it's important to stop and realize that that is exactly the goal of this group. It's to make sure that the projects and the open standards that are out there, that it's getting the input from the software and hardware vendors who are going to be using those standards and working on those projects. But that mutual benefit piece, I think, is the most important part. Both should benefit. The software and hardware vendors are getting something out of those open standards, but they're also putting something into it to make sure that they are getting what they want. And that's what the SBG is about, is making sure that that connection is happening. So how or why should any one get started with open standards in terms of software vendors and hardware vendors? And the first thing that I say is look for how open standards can help you, because that's the real place to start. It's interesting to try and look at all of the open standards, and it can be confusing about which one's going to work. Where should I start? And I think it's just reviewing your own product and trying to figure out where an open standard fits for you. And a great example is at Procore, which is where I'm a senior product manager. The first open standard we started working with was BCF, or Building Collaboration Format. And the way we got into it was the realization that a lot of our clients wanted the ability to view the coordination issues that we track within our software within other softwares. And that left us with a question of, do we try to build lots of plugins to other softwares that we have to maintain? Or can we work with an open standard like BCF that we export that then is easy to bring in to those other softwares, so we don't have to build and maintain lots of plugins to other softwares? And so immediately it was obvious to us what an open standard can do for us. It allows us to focus on our product while not taking our resources and using them for things like lots of plugins that are not core to our product. And that's just something to think about when it comes to your products and thinking about these open standards. A great resource for where to look at who is using open standards, which products are using open standards, and which open standards they're using, is right at Building Smart International. I have this link here to the technical buildingsmart.org resources, software and implementations page.
I think Connor, you bring up a good point. I think one of the things that a lot of these companies who already support things like IFC and BCF, and in the future things like the BSDD, is that they see the value of using these open standards as the basis for exchanging information, rather than trying to constantly develop and maintain proprietary APIs between one-to-one systems. That instead you get involved in an ecosystem where if you are exporting an IFC file correctly, or you're able to import an IFC file, that it doesn't matter where it comes from, you should be able to consume it. Your users should be able to use that information and utilize it. I think this is one of the challenges that a lot of startup companies have is, well, who do I hitch my horse to? Which wagon do I hitch my horse to? What's most effective? And I don't think I think there's a lot of times of jumping to a conclusion that, oh, well, this particular vendor seems to be the most popular, so I'm just gonna do that. And then you miss out on opportunities to be able to connect to a lot more, and to a larger ecosystem, and to more workflows and everything. So I hope that through the SPG we can have those discussions, and we can show how it works, and we can even show how maybe some people who you didn't think were supporters of IFC and BCF are there. In fact, they're very robust supporters, and they have a lot of implementations and workflows that they support through these building smart standards.
Absolutely. So if you're going to get started, I guess there's this question of what's in it for you. And what's in it for you in particular is what's in it for you to be part of Building Smart USA in the service providers group. So a lot of what Building Smart USA is going to offer is a connection to a lot of the projects that they're working on, or international projects. This is a great source to come through and get connected to everything. I'm going to highlight some of the more beneficial ones I think here. First one I have here is the Open Common Data Environment, or OpenCDE, and this is a group in BSI that is working to create this intercommon data environment, so that when people are trying to work on or work with or create common data environments, there's an open way of doing so. And this is actually really important right now. You can see it going on out there that, I'm going to talk again from Procore's point of view, that, as a document management system in the CDE ourselves, we are often asked to share our information with other systems, RFIs and submittals and daily work reports and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not easy. Again, just like BCF, it requires these point solutions. And OpenCDE is working on creating these open APIs where maybe that will be easier in the future, so that Procore can connect to another program like Newforma without a very specific point solution. Also currently going on at Building Smart USA is the Building Smart Data Dictionary and the US Data Dictionary. And this is just a great program. And what you see here is kind of the basic idea, which is that organizations within the US with domain expertise would create content. And typically, in order to get their content into the Building Smart Data Dictionary over at BSI, there's a series of steps they need to take, and they actually need an agent who is able to kind of be the person that loads their data into Building Smart International. And that person, I believe, Jeff, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, needs to have some sort of certification or recognition as an individual who puts information there. And the general idea at the US Data Dictionary is that Building Smart USA will help to maintain the data dictionary for US entities and coordinate that connection to Building Smart International's data dictionary, which is basically a service offered to its members. Although I believe that's something that members would have to kind of work into, but it is something that really helps this process along for any organization that doesn't know how to connect or do so easily with Building Smart Data Dictionary. US Data Dictionary is here to be that go-between.
So a good example of this is saying, okay, we're working with AASHTO right now on a project in developing standards for BIM project delivery for bridges in the US. And as a part of that, they obviously are developing a whole set of terminology and properties and things that need to be a part of that BIM delivery process for bridges. So that forms the core of a data dictionary. And what that does is then says, okay, well, we're going to map all of these terms and these parameters and properties and everything to IFC 4.3. And that mapping is essentially an example of content for the data dictionary. And so that content is served by the Building Smart Data Dictionary through their centralized service. And then all of the software vendors, say for modeling bridges, have the ability to access that content through the Building Smart Data Dictionary through their APIs. So when say a bridge modeler, bridge designer is putting a bridge design together in, say, Open Bridge Modeler or InfraWorks or Technical Structures, as they're developing those, they can see what the specific mappings or property requirements are for a US-based bridge design, and how those different elements will be mapped to a corresponding IFC file that they choose to exchange. We can even include further definitions of particular properties and say, oh, this particular property has to fall within this range, or this has to be there, or these properties might be completely optional. And instead of manually doing it all the time for each project and for each jurisdiction, the data dictionary provides a way for the software vendors to provide that in an automated way. And it's not just about model authoring either. I mean, this can be for validating models. It could be for doing things like, an analysis like a quantity takeoff, or, scheduling, is making sure that, your understanding of what should be there in terms of the information is corresponding with how your application or how your process works to ingest and utilize that information.
And I find it to be very exciting that Building Smart US recognized that that kind of service was needed, and organizations like AASHTO, did not have the capacity to build and manage their own, data schema or their own domain, and
Yes.
that they can provide that service for them.
Right. So acting as an agency and owner, it gives us an opportunity to set up these national standards from smaller groups that, like you said, may not have the capacity to deal with the agency work. So essentially, as an agent, we have the technical expertise for people to interact directly with the Building Smart Data Dictionary service. So being able to format the information correctly, making sure that it's maintained, see if there's any issues, and even do further mappings to other standards if that's what's asked for. From a content point of view, we're also saying that we want to make sure that all of the stakeholders in the US can come to an agreement on that content and make sure that, say the GSA is doing one thing and AASHTO is doing one thing, and National Association of Home Builders is doing a thing. Well, making sure that any terms or any properties or anything aren't conflicting, and that they are either complementary or they overlap, right? Because what you don't want is vendors struggling with the fact that, well, I've got one body here asking for a way of encoding information, and then I've got another body over here that's looking for something completely different. And how can we resolve those kinds of content things, or making connections between different types of content? And I think to do that at the national level, to do that through the organization is really valuable, that we can bring all of those disparate voices together in one place, and through consensus really work this out.
So this is, an example of a great project that you could be a part of here at Building Smart USA. There's also IFC.json. So it's a modern serialization of the IFC schema for widespread web-based development and implementation. I personally find this to be very exciting. The whole idea that we'll be able to, maybe transfer some of the information a little more efficiently is exciting to me. And so this is a project that's happening within the technical subcommittee. Jeff, I'm not sure if you have any update on necessarily where that is, but.
So we're supposed to have the final specification for IFC JSON 4.3 wrapped up soon. I think the other interesting part about this is what happens next. So how does this idea of a JSON-based serialization benefit particular workflows in exchanging information, particular processes, or different types of software, and then also the ability to translate between different schemas. So I can have the IFC schema, I could have, say, digital twin description language is another schema. And then using some, actually there's even current online tools that do it, but is using those tools to essentially do those mappings for you, and then provide a means of a pipe or a pathway to translate that IFC information into something that's a digital description language file, digital twin description language file for another system to use. And that's just one example. It could be numerous numerous ones.
Yeah, great project. Super excited about it. There's also, the work that's going on with IFC 4.3. So for those who may not know what's going on with 4.3, it is an extension of IFC 4 to start to include basically everything outside of buildings, bridges, tunnels, ports and waterways, alignments, geotechnical railways and roads. This has gained a lot of traction over the past few years, and is currently planned for ISO adoption this year.
So they'll be making the submittal hopefully in March and begin the ISO process, which takes a few months to do. But they're trying to wrap up some of the technical work on the specification right now.
Yeah, but yeah, being involved with and understanding what the latest release of IFC is going to look like. Because there are some fairly significant changes, it's important to be a part of this. Facility management handover. This is all about the information exchange around FM handover. So this would be, I believe, the information exchange that happens at the end of construction that is going to owners so that they can populate their CMMS systems. Not too terribly different from the idea of what DTDL was, except that's more IoT or digital twin. This is to get the right information into the preventative maintenance and other maintenance programs that owners use.
And in essence, this is an update of, at the international level, of the previous FM handover from 2009. And from there you see national specifications like Kobe and others have that same sort of purpose. What this does is says, okay, well, instead of having all these different national specifications, let's go back and look at the international one, look at how it changes and how we adapt it to IFC 4.3. And then we're also looking at how we can develop a core piece so that any type of FM handover exchange could be facilitated. So first one is equipment maintenance, but you could also do things for like cleaning and others. And there's another project at BSI that's analyzing 5 other use cases and 5 other possible exchanges. But that information is always available and interoperable, right? So that you don't have like one FM handover specification for equipment maintenance, and then you have one for cleaning, and they don't relate to each other. We don't want that. You want to have a more interoperable modular solution that says, okay, I know I'm doing FM handover. I know if I need geometry, this is what it's going to look like. And if I need to know all the project information, this is what it's going to look like. And it's always going to look like that. And then whatever subgroup or particular process or things that I need for that particular handover exchange, this is what I'm going to get it as. And this is how it's going to be conveyed. And that there's the ability then to even tweak that at, say, the national level or even within an organization too. And I think this is a big deal that we're trying to move forward, and we're always looking for more participation and sponsorship for these types of projects.
So outside of those projects, Building Smart USA also is going to be here to support US projects and case studies around open standards. So a good example of a US project that is happening right now is the TPF 5372 BIM for Bridges and Structures project. This is a pooled fund that is put on by the transportation industry with AASHTO and FHWA. And they're working on making an information exchange for bridges and structures that represents what the US is looking for, particularly from design to construction and design to fabrication. And that's a project that is happening right now. And that's just one example. But there may be more projects that come up, whether it's, you know, some organization, I don't know, it could be healthcare, it could be federal government, who are looking to have projects here in the US around IFC and information exchanges. These are all things that when you're part of Building Smart US, you're going to get a chance to be involved in. And a lot of these lead to case studies, the ability to take our software, take our hardware, and demonstrate how we meet the needs of these projects. And that's an exciting opportunity, I think, for us, you know, software vendors and hardware vendors who often are looking for those kinds of stages to show how we can meet these kinds of requirements. And then, of course, there's the future of IFC. IFC 5 is what will be coming one day. It's the next generation interoperability standards. Also in the future of IFC is the BIM and its connection to building energy modeling. And that's a project that Jeff has worked on or is working on or leading, all of the above as well. And so these are both things that we can be excited about, you know, coming down the line.
And I think with, you know, especially with the IFC 5 is, it's very important for us not to just get input from one point of view. You know, what do end users want out of an information exchange, right? What do they want to process? But also, you know, we need to continue to get input from those companies who provide solutions for those users, right? So I think IFC JSON is a good example of that. There's been other vendors and other talk within the international community of saying, okay, well, if we wanted to expand the usage of IFC, how do we do that? Do we do it through different serializations? You know, we separate what the schema represents and what it does, the architecture of it from the actual usage of it, so that we can be more flexible and we can say, you know, have a JSON version and have, say, C++ version of it, or, you know, any numerous ways of being able to semantically describe all of this information and then make use of it in different environments and workflows and tools. But it really does require those vendors then to be a part of that conversation and join this community to say, well, hey, you know, this is our experience in another aspect or from another process, and this is how we would like to use it. I think, you know, for me, a good example would be we look at geometry representations in IFC with the rapid rise of point clouds and the use of point clouds in many different types of workflows. How do we get point clouds to work with IFC? Why don't we? You know, isn't it a legitimate, you know, geometry representation? What does that open up for possible, you know, workflow and process possibilities as well as software possibilities? And then what would be the best way to do that? And having a discussion from the technical experts to really get into doing that. And I think that follows too with the BIM to BEM interconnection is, you're never going to have one software that's going to do everything, and you have all these different workflows. So what is the important touch points for that information exchange to occur? And what's the optimal way of doing it, right? And, you know, it has to be a discussion between those experts at both the end user level and the tool level.
Absolutely, and that's a good review of some of the future items for IFC. But then the last slide I have in here on the what's in it for you is the idea that, it's not just about the open standards within Building Smart. It's also about its connection to other open standards. For folks who are, into the digital twin topic right now, how it is connect to, DTDL, as Jeff was talking about, or, anyone who has any clients, particularly in the transportation space, will know that GIS to BIM connection is something they've been asking for a very long time. And working right now with BSI is the Open Geospatial Consortium, and trying to figure out exactly how to make that connection, because it is slightly different. But those two worlds need to share data. And if those are the type of projects that are interesting to you, then this is a good place to be involved. So that was all the topics of, the what's in it for you. Here's the things that are going on at Building Smart US that may be valuable to you as a solution provider. But when we start to meet as a group, the SPG group will have some things that they're trying to achieve. And I'm just going to go through what some of those goals and activities are. The first one is IFC and BCF education, and in general, any open standard education that's built within Building Smart. And I'm very much into the idea that when you form groups like the SPG, that we have actions that we take. And it's not just a group where we, sit around and look at each other. And the action that we're looking to take around the education of open standards is that we're going to be communicating both within the SPG and to external partners. The whole idea is that we're trying to provide context. What are the open standards? And what's the value of these open standards? Where do you get help if you're someone who's looking to implement them and don't know what to do? Again, whether it's a solution provider or some external party that is just trying to understand how this is beneficial to them, this is going to be our role to communicate these ideas. And also, to Jeff's comment before about IFC 5, about how it's going to need input. I think that as a group, the SPG group should be keeping a list of what are the top changes the US solution providers need. That's something that ought to be tracked and communicated to Building Smart International, so they know at least what the interests of the US marketplace solution providers is.
Yeah, I think we have a good opportunity here to then also help develop consensus, right? So if we look at other chapters, particularly if I look at like Norway and Finland, I look at Germany, they have very active chapters. I think they also have very active vendor communities within those chapters that, have discussions like this and say, okay, we all, all 20 of us in a particular room might say, we all have our different solutions, but to best serve the industry and the community and our market, we have to come to an agreement on how we're going to do particular things within this context of the Building Smart standards and information delivery. And, I think this is our chance, right? This is our chance to do it at the US level. And we also know that, there's US companies, US-based companies that are international companies. There's things that they've learned from the other markets. And I think their input is really valuable for those who are maybe just US-centric to understand why we choose to do certain things or have certain asks the way that we ask them.
And I really do feel that this is a very important topic. I feel that the US service providers have not had a very strong voice at the international level. And I think it's something that is notably missing. And I'd be excited about, getting the chance to really make that change. The other action we'll be doing is we're going to be connecting to projects. I mentioned that the BIM for Bridges and Structures project, there's going to be other projects that happen within Building Smart US. There's going to be projects that are active and ongoing at Building Smart International. And it's really just making that connection between solution providers and those active projects, because those active projects need help. They need the solution providers to have input to make sure that, one, they get completed, but two, that those projects not just get completed, but they get completed in a way that it results in a standard that's good for everyone. And the only way to do that is to be involved. So, some of the things that we're going to be trying to do is make sure that it's recognized what projects there are. That's a hard enough question to answer all by itself. If you don't know what projects there are to get involved in, then you probably won't get involved. So, item number one is to make sure that that's something that's regularly communicated. And then the next thing is, what do those projects need? Do they need help? That's the next part. And if we're in this group, communicating clearly within the SPG, that's something that everyone will be aware of. These are the projects. These are the, this is the needs that they have. And maybe, my organization or your organization can jump in and help, because it's, again, mutually beneficial.
So I think one question that commonly comes up is, well, what does that participation entail? How much money do I have to invest? All of that kind of stuff. And it does depend on the project. So I will tell you, for the most part, software and hardware solution providers are not typically asked to directly invest in the funding of projects. And the funding of projects involves, hiring project managers and the resources needed to run these things through BSI, or maybe even through a BSA project. Oftentimes, most often, it's the vendor is being asked to participate early on, to do things like prototyping and validating that this type of workflow or information exchange can occur. Get in the early stages of providing those implementations, and then providing prototypes that can then be circulated and marketed with, and all of that, and then having a leg up on everybody else and actually supporting that project, that standard, whether it's a model view definition or the whole schema or whatever that may be, from the early get-go. We have a few vendors that like being a part involved of that transportation pool fund project. Because they're involved now, they know what the expectations are when the DOTs and their service providers begin using that information exchange. They know which software vendors are going to be up and ready to go right away, right? And that's important, and it shows the industry that the vendors are committed to doing these kinds of things and supporting them. And their investment is their time and money and expertise in building the capabilities into their software.
The last item is the connection to BSI. And it's really trying to get everyone involved, to be part of the General Assembly, to take part in the General Assembly forums. I have two of them listed here, the BSI Forum and BSI Developers Forum. Both great places to get involved, ask questions, answer questions, and have discussions, because it's really, us sharing information with each other that gets us to real solutions. And this is a really important part that we're going to really try and get everybody involved in. If you're a part of the SPG, we're going to push for involvement in these forums.
It's, a thing to recognize is that this is an industry peer organization. So end users, implementers, academics, everybody who is in these forums typically have, one role or interest or another. There are varying degrees of expertise, but the whole intent is to have everybody work together and support each other to move the ideas and move the implementations forward. I manage the forums. I think we've had a pretty good uptick over the last year, people getting involved. And I think through the General Assembly, getting the vendors to really directly interact with each other. It doesn't matter your size. I mean, Autodesk and Trimble and Nemetschek and Bentley and all of these other large vendors are there. But, sometimes they have the same issue that a small vendor does. And are willing to work together to, provide some feedback and information about how to move these things forward.
All right, and we're going to end our presentation here with a call to action. The first call is get engaged. Join Building Smart US or BSI with a membership. There's also individual participation. But when you do join, we're looking for software and hardware developers to join the solution provider group. This is the place where we're going to interact with each other, and is hopefully going to be something that is beneficial for you and the whole Building Smart product. The other call to action is stay informed. So I'm going to give the plug for the monthly service provider group meetings. They're going to be the second Thursday of each month. That's going to start next month because I'm counting this as this month's. So in February, we're going to start having regular meetings where we do the things that I just talked about as action items for the SPG. Also, make sure and hit the monthly webinar series. These are great ways to understand what's going on outside of the SPG in other areas of Building Smart US and Building Smart International. Stay connected. Visit the websites, visit LinkedIn. BuildingSmartUS.org is the place to go if you want to know what's going on at Building Smart US. And you can get the summit recordings of the webinars, I think, like this one. Get the understanding of what's going on projects, and see what other discussions might be happening on LinkedIn. But stay connected. And of course, the best place I think to stay connected is through the forums. It's a little more specific, it's a little more specific in terms of content, where this might be a little broader. This is where you want to go if you want to have real discussions about how to do something, or to get specific answers. Make sure and use these forums. But these are the call to action that I think everybody needs to do. Get involved, join the group, have conversation, and stay informed. So thank you. You can contact Jeff, myself, or Join USA at buildingsmart.org. All of these are ways to reach out. If you want to be part of the SPG, please reach out to Jeff or myself, and we'll make sure that you will be involved. And with that, I think we can go to any questions you might have.
Yeah, nobody's typed any in here, so anyone with any questions? So I think maybe like in February with the first meeting, I think the key thing is, we'll try to, after, publishing this is, reach out to our contact bases, see if we can get people interested in attending the meetings. We want to get an overview of, those companies who are already, Building Smart members and Building Smart USA members, what their level of, participation and maturity level on all of this is, and then also get sort of an idea about those new companies who, need a better understanding. And then I think, as Connor mentioned before, that helps us get a better understanding of what we need in terms of the balance of teaching people how to do things, where things are important, provide that specific context in those meetings. I think, there's opportunities that come up with different conferences that we're involved with as a chapter, and how we can maybe make those connections even at those conferences. It's something that I've done in the past with Building Smart International, with other groups. is keeping that communication open and making sure that, one vendor who's maybe a BIM authoring tool makes a connection with those analysis tools or CDE groups, and making sure that, their clients' information, their customers' information can be utilized in those other softwares and different workflows. I think there's another, possible resource. I see Neil Peterson is on here from ODA. It's not just about the tools to actually make models, but in the case of ODA, it's actually the tooling that provides the ability for other tools to have that IFC capability. So, we can help small vendors make those connections with different developers like ODA or some of the other open source groups, and, making sure they understand, as Connor mentioned before, how to do this. How do I take this on? Now I've understood my value in being connected through these standards. Well, technically then where do I start? And we can make connections to groups like that. I don't see any other questions coming through.
All right. Well, then with that, I'd thank everyone for attending, and hope to see you all in the SPG.
Yep. Again, look for the announcements. Yeah, usually you see them on LinkedIn, or come to the Building Smart USA, sign up, and we'll make sure we get the word out for the first of the meetings. With that, thank you everyone for joining us. Please spread the word. Please consider joining if you haven't already. And let's see how we can move the industry forward through the use of open standards in all these different tools. Thanks again.
Thanks all.